I love technology, but with every swipe and notification, it subtly erodes human connection. The unfiltered, genuine interactions that breathe life into our relationships. The reason I say this is I have a challenge for you guys, which is think of the last time where you entered a coffee shop or a restaurant or a public place where people gathered together and none of them used their phones. All of them were present in conversation. I don't think I can remember a time where this is actually the case. The reason I bring this up is because I am just back from China and I'm kind of reflecting upon sort of my 3-week to 1-month vacation. And I was definitely reminded of my life there as a young kid without any phones in a time where there was a lot of codependency. And what I mean by that is, for example, I have a bunch of moments captured on my phone where I would go on a walk with my grandma and she would just bump into people. And for example, I would bump into a neighbor from when I was like maybe 5-6 years old. She would babysit me or have me hang out with her grandson while my grandparents were busy. So we would always get to bump into them. So that's a social interaction where we would just get from walking from place to place. We would also not go to some supermarket, but instead we go and buy groceries from the local farmer who brings their groceries. This is something common that happens in China where the local farmer sort of brings goods down like to a community and you would just go there and it's kind of like a local farmer's market for people in that specific building and community. And it's the same lady who's been there many, many years from when I was really, really young. And we've built that relationship with these local farmers. And then of course, on the side, there's also like street vendors who we all know, like people who are selling breakfast, things like that. And we know everyone. We also know the security who is on guard for the community. And everyone just has already a relationship with one another. And in one walk with my grandma, it wasted so much time. It would take an hour, not because we were going anywhere far, but because like every couple seconds we would bump into somebody new. But even beyond that, instead of using some tech or some app, for example, my grandpa wanted to create paintings for us to bring back to Canada. And that was a whole disaster, bringing it back, getting it through security. I'll go into details about that sometime later. But he wanted to have the painting framed for us to bring. And instead of using some app or finding some store, he would just call his friend and his friend would help him with the framing and do all of the setup. And they actually came by and gave the paintings to us. So I say all of these stories and I'm reminded of all of these experiences in China because I remember how when I was younger, there was just so much codependency. And when you were outside without technology, you had to depend on others. You had to have others, babysit sort of your younger grandchildren, your children, because you needed that help. You knew everyone in the community around you. And that was just something that was incredibly important for your community. In contrast, in many ways, technology has promoted individuality instead of this sort of idea of codependency. What I mean by that is, instead of me going downstairs and buying food from somebody, the local people that I used to know, every morning I would just order Uber Eats, which is Meituan, the same sort of app in China where they do like delivery. And instead of saying hi to the guy, I would say, please leave it next to the door. Sometimes I would actually be quick enough to open the door and grab it. I know for some people who are like, I know for celebrities, of course, and for people who don't sort of want to have that interaction, they would just wait, listen through the door, see if the Uber Eats driver or delivery person has left. And then once they've left, they open the door and grab the food. Then that way there wouldn't have to be any type of social interaction. Instead of buying groceries at the local market, of course I order online too, and it's just because I'm too lazy to carry all of the water up those steps. I mean, I'm taking the elevator as well, but I have to walk back to the community, things like that. So instead of doing that, I have sort of somebody who drives their motorcycle, the delivery person delivers it for me, puts it next to my door, and then I just have all the snacks and have all the local groceries that I want without even having to walk downstairs. If I need to learn something instead of going to a painting class that my grandparents would previously do to learn with a group of people, I might use Coursera, I might use Khan Academy, I might use YouTube. Even in our relationships, like I remember my grandparents giving me stories about how for somebody who they loved, they would, if they were long distance, they would send letters that would take months and months to get to them. And because of that, like one letter that somebody sends you, they could remember for an entire lifetime. Whereas now, if something doesn't work out, you kind of just swipe and move on to the next one. So it's true that technology has made things more efficient. Definitely, I really enjoyed my life in China now because I'm able to order whatever food that I want. I don't have to go out as much and I can focus on some of the things that make me more productive. But there's also undoubtedly something very negative that is behind all of this. For one, we've lost that social engineering where we can go downstairs, go into a community, do certain activities, and have that genuine, unfiltered human connection. We've sort of lost the soul of community, physical interaction with the people around us. And a big problem with this is that there's figures that show this, which is basically, it's pretty obvious where the technology curve, especially with AI now, it's going up exponentially, Moore's law, things like that, whereas our biological makeup, our human evolution, it's on a very, very slow, steady trajectory that can in no way catch up to the amount of advancement that has occurred in the past 50 to 100 years. Think about it. I'm talking about experiences that I had as a child, and every couple years, things change so quickly. My experiences are probably even different to my sister, who's 9 years younger than me. So things are just advancing at a rate in which our biologic adaptation cannot sort of sufficiently adjust to. And biologically, we know we need these types of social interactions. We know that social interaction, being able to know the people around our community, having genuine connection, is something that's an essential part of our makeup. When we think of all of this and when we think of this as a problem, people will come out and say that, you know what? The solution to all of this is social media. Look at the benefits that social media has brought. Look at, for example, Discord gaming groups. Now you're able to catch up with friends long distance. You can play games together. Whenever you have a hard day's work, you can come back and genuinely have interaction with all your friends, which is definitely fantastic. We're able to, at a scroll of a button, get updates from people from different places. Like you would never be able to know, like, oh, what's happening to my friend in Norway or what's happening to my friend who is in a different country. But with a swipe of a button on Instagram, on Facebook, you'll get an idea of what they're doing. With Twitter, you can follow your most favorite people. And in a way, it feels more personable, right? Like you can get an idea of your community around you, but you can also get an idea of an extended community around you. I can even totally understand for people who are introverts where they say, you know what, I feel more of my genuine self. Like my online presence, I feel more genuine because I'm more nervous in sort of a real life setting. And it's harder for me to present a version of myself that's as authentic as sort of my online self. For me, I would say that I am extroverted sort of outwardly, but also I feel like for me, I do prefer like to be more introverted, to be sort of in the same consistent places. So I totally understand where people are coming from there. But the fact that we feel so comfortable with all of this, to me, is what is the scariest. The reason why I'd say this is super scary is because I feel like we have found artificially through social media a way to satiate all of those sort of biological needs for social connection, but it's done in a really artificial way. This is what I mean by that. So despite all of the benefits that I've talked about, I just want to read through some of the things where I just did like a quick ChatGPT search to show you how like currently, these social media sites encourage you to stay on the website. For example, Number 1, variable rewards. What is it? Inspired by casino slot machines, social media apps use unpredictable rewards where you don't know when you'll receive a hit, like a notification, a like, or a comment. And why it works? Because variable rewards release dopamine, our brain's pleasure chemical, making it more difficult for us to stop checking notifications. Okay, infinite scrolling. Content feeds are designed to be endless, removing natural stopping points so users remain engaged longer. Why it works? Without clear endpoints, users are less likely to pause and leave. The infinite scroll continuously stimulates curiosity and the desire for more. Social validation. Platforms encourage users to seek likes, comments, and follows, which provide immediate validation. Humans are wired to seek approval socially because they want to receive that social validation. Similarly, fear of missing out. Features like stories and live stream content are only available temporarily, creating a sense of urgency. The limited availability drives users to check in frequently so they don't miss out on trending moments, reinforcing habitual use. I'll list all of this here if you want to read more about all of the things that social media does, but it's known. I mean, even there was a documentary on Netflix in terms of how they're sort of hacking our own sort of biological needs in order to give us sort of like these dopamine fixes for us to continue looking at this. And I know like a lot of people will say something like, so what? Like if social media makes money, but if this satisfies sort of my need to have sort of social connection, or it reduces my need to have a physical one-on-one meeting with somebody, why is this a bad thing? Like, why can't I replace this with my online presence, having social connection online? I don't think this is like sort of a black and white answer. There's definitely some benefits with technology, but if we talk from like a more scary perspective, and I hate sort of putting like sort of these metaphors that scare, like make things super scary, like those Netflix documentaries, but they talk a lot about how like social media sort of biohacks humans, like a digital lab equipment where users are sort of like lab rats in our mazes, and certain actions within the app triggers certain behaviors for the majority of people, and lab rats sort of push buttons for food pellets, similar how we're trained to like swipe, like scroll for dopamine hits. Alternatively, sometimes people think of this as like social media as a casino where it transforms our natural desires biologically into ways that are addictive habits within these apps, such as them using, what casino uses, which is like lights, sounds, slot machines, their flooring, their environment to keep people playing in casinos. Social media has used these likes, notifications, infinite scrolling to keep us continuously engaged, almost like we're kind of like this lab rat that we continue to get these dopamine hits. And of course, people always reference the idea of Brave New World, where we can just take a soma, we can just take a pill, and we can instantly feel happiness. That's the max efficiency, right? Like we don't even need to scroll, we don't even need to do anything physical. We just take a pill, and it gives us everything that biologically that we need. You would say that from a technological perspective, that's improving society because that's the maximum efficiency. With just one pill, we can just get exactly all of the biological feelings that we want. But is it where we want to get to? I mean, all these sci-fi books, aren't they written because they want to give us warnings about what the future could potentially be? And I'm not trying to say that I feel like everyone should come up with their own answer with how they want to engage with these new things. But the one thing that, I think there's two parts. I think first, we need to all be aware of it. And I feel like some people maybe are not aware because of just how intricately designed these apps really are. And of course, that's what the Netflix documentary about these social media apps are for. But I think the second part is just that I honestly feel like up to this point, all of these tech apps such as Uber Eats, like social media, and all of these apps have promoted our digital self. It has promoted us improving our online presence and commodifying that in a way that can generate revenue for them. However much of an inefficiency it is to meet somebody in person, however scary it is to meet somebody in person, however awkward it can get, I feel like technology can help for that. Like one of the reasons I feel like for at least introverts, or at least from my perspective, it can be tough to meet somebody in person is because, like you said, like we've all said, it's highly inefficient. Like you have to get dressed, you have to get yourself ready, you have to travel there, you have to do an activity. And in the end, you're not confident of if the person you're meeting actually has common interests with you. And I feel like, why can't technology help that? Why can't technology make it easier to figure out people's common interests? Why can't technology help us have better, real life interaction? Clubhouse was a good example where they started shifting text to audio, where audio is a more personable medium, where text is hard to sort of quantify or feel what people are saying, whereas audio, you can kind of judge a little bit more through their voice, and it's sort of like a low-cost communication medium, whereas like meeting in person is sort of something very high cost where you have to do a lot to actually interact with someone. So I definitely feel like in the future there's going to be a shift where social media is not only building our digital self, but also helping us connect to the people who we really want and finding people who fit our physical self. Now, of course, You might also be a proponent where, you know what, we can abandon our physical self entirely in the future and we can just go towards more and more towards that Brave New World pill where you just need a pill and you build towards your digital self and have maximum efficiency that way. But for me, I don't see it that way. I see it as two different things, and I feel like technology has really missed the ball on having social media which could help build physical, genuine interaction. Who's gonna be the company who's gonna do this? Who is gonna step up and make these changes? I don't know, but it is something that I'm really curious to find out in the next decade or so, how this all develops. Now, for me, this is something that I still would love to learn in the future. So I have a list of books that I asked ChatGPT and I also went online to read about. I'm probably going to start with, let's see, The Power of Moments, really describing face-to-face interaction. Okay, interesting. I really like the synopsis of Connected by Nicholas, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correct, Christakis and James Fowler. So I am gonna start with that book. But if you are interested, I have listed the books here if you're interested in reading them. I would love to learn more about this myself and how technology has changed society as a whole. All right, see you guys in the next vlog.